No DQ Galaxy, we are live with No DQ&A video right here on nodq.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Aaron Rift NoDQ, or simply just go to nodq.com/YouTube. No DQ&A video, the Q&A series for nodq.com that has been going back to 2011. Still doing these live streams. Thank you to everybody watching, whether it's live or on demand. I appreciate your viewership and support. I have a lot of questions, many leftovers from the last No DQ&A video. I will be getting to those. And of course, super chats are very much appreciated. And if you send in a super chat, your question goes to the front of the line. You get top priority. Your question will be the next one answered. With that being said, let's get into the questions. 2024 has already been a very interesting year in the world of wrestling. Lots of news, lots of happenings. Business is booming for the most part. Let's get started. We're going to be talking about the future. We got this first question from Ian, who sent in a question via email. There are talks of Cody Rhodes versus The Rock at WrestleMania 41. Is it possible that The Rock will face Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 41 back-to-back, or is Roman Reigns versus The Rock getting delayed until WrestleMania 42? I personally feel that delaying it is too long. You need to do Roman Reigns versus The Rock at WrestleMania as soon as possible. Remember, that was being talked about for WrestleMania 39. The Rock's not getting any younger. None of us are. But I don't know how much longer The Rock can continue to do all the physicality. I like that idea, though, of having back-to-back matches where The Rock can face Cody Rhodes. Win, lose, or draw, he goes on to night 2 to face Roman Reigns to see who is truly the head of the table. I like that idea. Otherwise, when would you do Cody Rhodes versus The Rock? I mean, that could be the WrestleMania match, but like I said, I think we need to have the Roman Reigns versus Rock match happen at WrestleMania 41. You could have Rock beat Cody before WrestleMania and then just have the match with Roman Reigns versus the title. But of course, there's always that argument, well, that match doesn't need to be for the title. I do like that back-to-back idea. Chat room, let me know. Do you guys like that idea or not? Night 1 of WrestleMania 41, Rock versus Cody. Night 2, Roman Reigns versus The Rock. Let me know. Leave a comment. I got this question via email from the Cleaver, Colin Andrew. Colin said, with the debut of the Wyatt 6, is the 6th member Alexa Bliss, or are they counting the Lantern as 6 in memory of Bray Wyatt? I, like many others, thought that Alexa Bliss was going to be part of this new group, but what you mentioned does make sense. Bray Wyatt himself could symbolically be the 6th member of the group, thus the Wyatt 6. Alexa Bliss being part of it would be cool. WWE could have brought back Matt Hardy to be part of the group, but I like the lineup that they have. Why not utilize people that are lost in the shuffle? You have Nikki Cross, who wasn't doing anything. This is something for her to do. Dexter Lumis, who just faded into obscurity. Get him back in a major storyline. Joe Gacy, who's been in NXT. This is a big moment for him. And Eric Rowan, the veteran, bring him back. He was one of the original Wyatt family members. Unfortunately, the only original member still alive, but makes sense to bring him back. I think WWE made good picks, and if Alexa's not part of it, that's not necessarily a bad thing. She did a tremendous job when she was affiliated with Bray Wyatt, but you want to do something different and new with this group. Having Eric Rowan as like the one former member coming back, that is fitting, and I really think that's all you need. Speaking of the group, the Wyatt Six, TJS sent in this question via email, said Bo Dallas, Dexter Lumis, Eric Rowan, Joe Gacy, and Nikki Cross. He says, are you concerned that the group's matches will be subpar? They are not exactly work rate athletes. Also, what would you do to prevent them from getting retribution or Final Testament syndrome? Does that really matter, the work rate? Now, I do think that this group needs to be able to deliver in the ring. I think about how, as cool as Bray Wyatt's stuff was, his matches did not set the world on fire. People hated the Hell in a Cell match with Seth Rollins. People hated the match with Bill Goldberg. The match with Randy Orton at WrestleMania was, for lack of a better term, a dud. So you want these guys to be able to perform well in the ring. Joe Gacy's pretty solid. And Eric Rowan, I thought was good when he was able to go out there like with the Bludgeon Brothers and even teaming up with Bray Wyatt. I thought he did fine. Dexter Lumis is fine. And Bo Dallas, good wrestler. The key is to maybe tone down on the supernatural elements of the group and let them actually get in the ring and wrestle. But we'll see. I already feel like there's going to be a lot of supernatural happenings, considering that Chad Gable was essentially murdered on Monday Night Raw. He's laying there. You have blood splatter on the wall, and he's just laying there non-respondent. And Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. So this question goes to the front of the line. Says, how should Chad Gable respond to what happened to him? Well, I think that Gable will have to address it if he's even alive, which I presume he is. One would think that this is not writing him off of television, since he said that he signed a new contract. He has to get some backup. Obviously, Otis and the Alpha Academy, that's done with now. Maybe he gets up a deal. He makes a deal with the Creeds and Ivy Nile, and perhaps they go after the Wyatt Six. I could definitely see that happening, where Gable gets some backup, and we get some matches with these teams. Maybe an 8-person match. You can have Nikki Cross on one side and Ivy Nile, and mix it up. 3 guys, 1 girl on each side. I could see that as a possibility. And I don't blame people for having low hopes for the group, considering how Bray Wyatt's gimmick would have its moments, but then it would fizzle out. I definitely understand that. And just real quick, going back to TJS, having them wrestle will benefit them not being like Retribution. Let's be real here. They're already levels above Retribution and even Final Testament. Final Testament at their best has not even come close to the best of the Wyatt family. I'm just throwing that out there. Maddie sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Maddie. Says, why does WWE allow blading now? New regime. Vince McMahon was known for not liking blood, and he did use it during the Attitude Era when they were competing against WCW. But eventually, when WWE went PG, Vince considered blading to be barbaric, and they were thinking of advertising. Now WWE is focusing on drawing in an older audience. Now they're not going back to the Attitude Era as far as doing really offensive and edgy content. They're still trying to appeal to families, but also adults as well. You got the UFC cross promoting, and UFC is very much an adult male audience, and WWE's trying to bring in those viewers with the TKO merger. And you got Netflix. WWE now will be able to push the envelope a little bit more on Netflix. You got The Rock involved. You got his influence, Triple H's influence. Remember, Triple H and Undertaker did a chair shot to the head spot at WrestleMania, WrestleMania 27, I believe, and got fined for it. So Triple H, you know, he's always one to try and bend the rules a little bit and push the envelope to make the product more appealing. Casa D18 Studios, JJ Williams sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, JJ. I appreciate it. JJ says, will anyone from TNA be in the NXT Battle Royal? Well, considering that by the time many people watching this on demand will have already seen it, my question may become very dated very fast, but I would think so. Why not? It's a perfect opportunity. What are you doing if you don't have at least one TNA person in there? Even if it's somebody you released, like a Mustafa Ali or a Dolph Ziggler, you know, bring them in for a one-off. Why not? I would do it, but we'll see if they do it. Again, this question is going to be very dated very quickly. I don't know if they're going to, but I think they should. And I want to see more higher profile WWE guys in TNA. I want to see AJ Styles go back to TNA. And as I mentioned on my Raw recap, Drew McIntyre, that guy should be on TNA to really sell the idea that he quit. Like that would generate a lot of buzz and make people think, oh, wow, maybe this was legit. Shout out to Mr. Anderson, who sent in a $2 super chat. Going back to the Wyatt 6th, who will be the 6th member, if not Bray Wyatt in spirit? We mentioned Alexa Bliss. I mean, I think she would be the best option if they're going to add one more person to the group. If not, Matt Hardy. But look what you got right now. Each character represents somebody from the Firefly Funhouse. You got Husky, you got Rambling Rabbit, you got Abby the Witch, who is Nikki Cross. I suppose Alexa Bliss could be Sister Abigail. So maybe Alexa. Like, I think if anybody else gets added, it will be Alexa. I mean, Matt Hardy, if Matt Hardy goes back to WWE, it's going to be him and Jeff Hardy as a tag team for one more run. That's what I think is going to happen if Matt ever does go back to WWE. Maddie sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Maddie. I appreciate it. Maddie's question, how would you book an AEW invasion? If the stars aligned and Paul Triple H Levesque and Nick Khan, they're like, you know what, let's do it. Let's work with AEW, and Tony Khan says, okay. Obviously, each side's going to want their promotion to look as strong as possible. So you gotta play the politics and all that. But ideally, whatever I would do, I would want both promotions to benefit from it. And most importantly, the fans to benefit from it. You really would want to give them the biggest matches possible. Don't do this like Kenny Omega versus Tozawa or something like that. You got to do Kenny Omega versus Roman Reigns or something like that. And you're going to have to figure out the politics of all of it. But you got to give the fans the dream matches, the absolute biggest matches possible. You got to not do what WWE did. It cannot be one-sided. I mean, it definitely has to be AEW gets some wins. WWE is going to have to allow that. And WWE would obviously get some wins. But the goal would be to elevate both brands and get more people interested in wrestling. Like Ian said, you got to make AEW look strong. If they're like WCW or ECW in that invasion angle from 2001, then it's not really going to benefit people long term. The wrestlers, the fans, it might benefit WWE, but that would be about it. And I don't think Tony Khan would do it unless AEW was guaranteed to look really good. And I would not blame him for that either. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. As always, much love to you for contributing. Psycho Jet Black says, why was Vince McMahon in the past so insistent on pushing one guy instead of multiple people at once? Wouldn't you have another star if one got injured? That's the old way of doing business. In the 70s, you would usually have your top draw. And back then, individual wrestlers could make a huge difference with business, whether it was Bruno Sammartino or Pedro Morales or superstar Billy Graham, Bob Backlund. Those guys were draws. If their name was on the marquee, people were buying tickets. And that's what happened with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, for a period, was bigger than the industry. And Hulk Hogan even said it himself in that heel promo at Bash at the Beach in '96. Wherever Hulk Hogan goes, that's where professional wrestling goes. In '94, when Hogan made the jump, that was a big deal for WCW. And I think Vince realized that you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket. And I think it was the right move. WWE now sells based on the brand. People go to see WWE. Yes, there are people that are going to see a specific wrestler, but I think most fans, they find out WWE's in town, they buy a ticket, and a lot of these shows sell themselves. SummerSlam, WrestleMania, it's the brand names. Those shows will sell because it's WWE, not because of a specific person. And Psycho Jet Black just throwing me a quick non-wrestling question, which I'll do one, but please, guys, send in wrestling questions. What is your advice on a successful marriage? Don't watch wrestling. No, I'm kidding. The key to a successful marriage is you have to trust the other person and vice versa. There needs to be the mutual trust, and you both have to make each other happy. And if one person's not happy, it's not going to work. Both people have to be happy. It truly needs to be a partnership. Both people have to contribute and make it work. I mean, that's a short answer to it. It's complicated. Everybody's different. Every scenario is different. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, trust. There's got to be trust both ways. It's doomed to fail. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. And as Philip said, communication. That's part of it as well. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, says, what stars in WWE do you consider damaged goods? Karrion Kross, Authors of Pain. I hate to say it. I like Karrion Kross, but I feel like he just hasn't made that connection with fans. I've talked about the idea maybe he can turn babyface. He needs something. And just because somebody is damaged goods doesn't mean that they're done for. Look at Chad Gable, Shorty G. What a comeback he made. It can be done. Even R-Truth, although they haven't really fully capitalized on him and Miz being tag team champions, they could have used that as a way to make R-Truth credible again. They even rehabbed Tozawa to a degree. So it can be done. I mean, there's plenty of people. I mean, a lot of the women's tag team division wrestlers got nothing going for them. Tegan Knox being one of them, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell. There's always an opportunity to turn things around for any of them. With the right booking and if the right gimmick catches on with the fans, pretty much anybody can recover and make a comeback and be something meaningful on the roster. Dragon Lee, you could argue that, like he's really kind of just been there. He debuted with a lot of fanfare, but now he just feels like a background player. Good question there. All right, let's get back to the email questions. So Ian had sent in this question. Ian says, Who do the Wyatt Six feud with? Personally, I see them costing Jey Uso Money in the Bank. I feel like they're baby faces, but maybe not. I guess it is possible that they could be tweeners, somewhere in the middle, a shade of gray. I just feel like because they're paying tribute to Bray Wyatt, it's going to be hard to get people to boo them. Now, they definitely attacked Chad Gable, basically killed him. So Chad Gable's a heel. That makes sense. Could they go after Jey Uso? I mean, it could be a scenario where nobody is safe and they're going to go after everybody. They're going to wage war on the entire WWE roster. I mean, that very well could be where this is going. And that's why we got to give it time. Like, you can't just say, oh, it's going to start strong, it's going to fizzle out. It might, but it also might be something really great. We're going to have to wait and see what they can cook for us. I do think it's going to be hard to get people to boo them, though. I see that being an issue. Now, Steve-O had sent in this email question. Thank you, Steve-O. And I apologize to Steve-O. I've missed a couple of his questions over the last few Q&As. Steve-O sent in this question and said, with NXT crowning a North American Women's Championship and AEW having the TBS Championship, how long until you think the WWE main roster will get one? What are your current thoughts on the mid-card women's titles? I'm not a fan. I know it's all about equality, the women getting what the men have, but there's too many damn titles. The only way I could justify adding a mid-card women's title to the WWE main roster is if you eliminated one. I don't know if that's the women's tag team titles or get rid of one of the mid-card men's titles like the U.S. title. There's just too many titles, bottom line. I know you want to have different championships for each division, women's division, men's division, make it as equal as possible, but it's just going to be too much. Either have fewer men's titles or just not add more. You know, focus on the titles you already have and try to make those more meaningful. Shout out to Caleb Jacobs from Oregon. Good guy. Caleb sent in a $2.54 super chat. Thank you. Says, how long do you think Cody will be champion for? Depends on when he's facing The Rock. If he's facing The Rock before WrestleMania, then he's probably going to lose, whether it's SummerSlam or the Royal Rumble. If he's holding on to that title until WrestleMania and facing The Rock, he very well might win and go beyond WrestleMania. So I really think it depends on when that match with The Rock is happening. I don't see anybody on the horizon beating him. Don't see Randy Orton doing it. Don't see Roman Reigns doing it. I don't think Roman's going to beat him. Only guy would be The Rock if it's before WrestleMania. Other than that, I could see Cody holding on to this title for well over a year. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. I appreciate it. Who would book Uncle Howdy? Who would you book Uncle Howdy against at WrestleMania? It's so far out from now. If Judgment Day is still a thing, Damian Priest might be a great choice, but that is so far in the future. If Karrion Kross's group was actually kicking ass and taking names, I'd say Karrion Kross. But like I said earlier, I feel like he has been damaged goods. Damian Priest and Uncle Howdy seems like a better option. Like, let the Wyatt Six go through the Final Testament first and then get them in there with Judgment Day, or build up a new faction, maybe the Bloodline. After War Games, the Bloodline might need some new opponents. Maybe they could go against the Wyatt Six. Depends on what Bo Dallas can do in the ring too. Like, the jury's still out on that. Like, how is Uncle Howdy going to wrestle? What's he going to do? There's just so many questions. I think it's really way too soon. I mean, for all we know, this faction could fizzle out in 6 months, and Uncle Howdy's not even a thing by WrestleMania. I hate to say it. Thank you for that, Psycho. And then Dylan sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dylan. I appreciate it. Says, where do you personally see the Liv Morgan, Dominic Mysterio, and Judgment Day story going in the next month or so, especially if Rhea Ripley comes back at SummerSlam or later? Well, it does depend on when Rhea Ripley comes back. If she's back for SummerSlam, then I think you definitely want the romance with Liv and Dominic to go to the next level. So when Rhea Ripley returns, she is a woman scorned. She's coming back for revenge, and you're off to the races. I like that they're taking their time with it. You definitely don't want to rush it. So again, it just depends on when Rhea's coming back. If it's SummerSlam, then I would say probably by Money in the Bank, you would want to have Liv and Dominic actually hook up and they're a thing. And that's when Rhea comes back for her revenge going into SummerSlam. So thank you for that. Maddie sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Maddie. Says, has NoDQ personally ever had a source in WWE? Not really. I mean, we have interviewed wrestlers over the years, and we have heard things from people, but nothing that I've ever really posted on NoDQ. But thank you for that question, Maddie. I don't even like talking to people in WWE, to be honest with you. I don't like the politics of dealing with people in WWE. So I just have mixed feelings about it. So I don't really go out of my way to talk to people there. But thank you for the question. And Dave Scheffler sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dave. Says, Wyatt 6 first impression 10 times better than Retribution or Final Testament. I mean, yeah, that comment earlier from TJS, it's not even close. Wyatt 6, one segment, they've made a bigger impact than anything Retribution ever did, and anything Final Testament has done, with all due respect to Karrion Kross. So, yeah, Wyatt 6, they're off to a great start, and it's just a matter of can they keep the momentum going. So thank you for that super chat, Dave. I appreciate it. Now, let's move on to the next email question. This one comes from TJS. Thoughts on the Master Lock Challenge? And he asked if I was entertained or did I get bored by it. Pretty cool that Bob the Lash was the first to break it and now uses it as a finisher himself. It was okay. It was very 80s. And I felt like Chris Masters was in the wrong decade. Chris Masters could have been a huge star in the 1980s, but his gimmick really felt out of place in 2006. I wasn't really the biggest fan of it. He was a good wrestler, and maybe under different circumstances in a different era, he would have been a bigger star. Bobby Lashley breaking it, using it as his finisher. Yeah, that's cool. Why not? And that was one of the first big moments for Bobby Lashley. So it did work out for him. It did get somebody over to a degree, I suppose, even though he left the company. Lashley did like a year after that. Got this question here from Jeremiah Dorset. Thank you for that. Says, what is the status on Jamie Hayter, and do you see Toni Storm being women's champion for a year? There hasn't really been any update on Jamie Hayter. Even Tony Khan has been asked about it publicly, and he hasn't really disclosed anything about Jamie Hayter. So, you know, if something's going on in her life and she doesn't want that information out there, you have to respect her privacy. I think we all would like to see her back. She was doing great things in AEW, but whatever's going on, it's been kept quiet. And as far as Toni Storm goes, I'm trying to think like who would be the one to dethrone her. I don't think it's going to be Saraya, although I expect them to have a match at All In England. But I don't know if Saraya is going to be the one. Maybe it's Saraya. If Toni can get past Saraya, then yeah, I could see her going over a year as champion. Since Mercedes Moné's got the TBS title, she'll be busy with that for a bit of time. Matthias Bryan sent in this email question. Thank you for that. Says, what do you think about the story and matches between DDP and the Macho Man Randy Savage in 1997? Have a great week, and thank you for a great channel. Greetings from Sweden. Oh, by the way, Dylan in the chat brought up Mariah May. I forgot about her. I think she would actually be the best choice over Saraya. I wouldn't even go with Saraya at this point. They've been building up Mariah May and Toni Storm for like 6 months to a year now. I think it's got to be Mariah if you want to try to take her to the next level and give her a push. Yeah, I would go with Mariah over Saraya. So anyways, back to this question about DDP and the Macho Man. That was a great feud. I mean, that really put Diamond Dallas Page on the map. The NWO stuff really turned his career around when he beat up the Outsiders, but working with Randy Savage gave DDP main event credibility. When he was in there with Savage, Savage treated him like DDP was his equal. And that really elevated DDP and made him a star. And Randy Savage getting rattled by DDP, selling DDP's offense and just selling DDP as a threat. Like that really made DDP's career. And their trilogy, those matches were really good. Maybe Randy Savage's last great feud of his career. And yeah, he really did well putting over DDP and making DDP a star. So if you haven't seen those matches, I definitely recommend them. Check them out on the WWE Network. Got this question via email from Ian. Hey, Aaron, I hope you had a great Father's Day. Thank you. Not a dad, but thank you. Says, do you think Chad Gable re-signed for a world title win? And with him going into Money in the Bank, could this be how WWE re-signed him? If it's not the reason, what do you think is the reason Gable re-signed? First and foremost, I think Gable re-signed because he's getting the biggest push of his career. Yes, you can argue he's doing jobs and hasn't been exactly on a winning streak, but he's been on TV every week. He's been in a hot storyline, and he's got the most momentum he's ever had. Why lose that by going to AEW? He probably got a big contract with WWE. They don't want to lose him. He's been killing it on TV. He's a great wrestler and he can talk. And I think the best years of his career are still to come. So I think it was a no-brainer for him to stay with WWE. And world title run, I don't know about that. Never say never, right? But I think he will get a serious push. And maybe he wins Money in the Bank. I mean, I would definitely not rule that out if he's alive, of course, after that attack from the Wyatt 6. He came a long way from Shorty G, and I definitely think we have not seen the peak of Chad Gable. Again, I don't know if that means world title or not, but Money in the Bank, maybe. Could see it being Jey Uso's night, but would not rule it out. Got this one here from the analyst, Michael Wayne. Shout out to Michael Wayne. He sent in this email question. Michael Wayne says, with WWE moving its PLEs to Sunday, with the exception of the two-night WrestleMania because of the UFC pay-per-view schedules, if that happens, will it affect WWE's ticket sales going forward? I don't think so, because for most of WWE history, the pay-per-views have been on Sundays. Saturday seems to be a good night for WWE, but if it's a hot product, I think people will go regardless of the night of the week. If it's a cold product, then doesn't matter when it's on. I think people will go regardless of the night. Maybe Saturday might make a small difference, but I don't think it really makes too much of a difference. I think, in the long run, TKO is going to make a ton of money by having the back-to-back nights with UFC in the same building as WWE the next night. They're going to save money on production costs, and that's going to be making them a lot more money than trying to run WWE on a different night on a Saturday when you have to factor in all of the production cuts and expenses. Miguel Ortiz sent in this question via email. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Miguel says, the low-attended AEW shows should speak to the company that they need to change or implement something that will get butts in seats. Why don't they see that issue, and why does their roster pretend it's not a problem? AEW caters to a niche audience. There are people that love AEW, that are very passionate about it, and I enjoy AEW. I'm not the biggest fan of AEW, but I think that they have their core fan base and they don't want to run them off. ECW was ECW because it catered to that audience that wanted the opposite of what WWE and WCW were doing. They wanted their underground wrestling with violence, with profanity, with nudity, with all the rules being broken. And that limited ECW's ability to grow. But if they had changed, they might have lost that fan base and it wouldn't have worked for them. AEW's in a weird position because the idea, you're running a business, you want to grow. But at the same time, Tony Khan probably doesn't want to risk losing his audience by changing AEW too much from what it has already been. Like, he wants to give these fans the wrestling, where the best wrestle. He wants to give them these matches with all the work rate wrestlers like Okada and Ospreay. He wants to hear the "This is awesome" chants in the arena every night. That's what he's focusing on. And he's a billionaire. He's got a billionaire father. The family has billions of dollars, however much money they have. A lot of money. So they can pretty much do what they want to do. And Tony Khan is happy if the fans that attend the shows are raving and calling AEW the greatest promotion of all time. And if he's getting the 5-star ratings, that's what Tony Khan wants. And it's clearly only working for a certain audience. They're struggling to draw 3,000, 4,000 people at the arenas. And, the product they put out is just only appealing to a small portion of the overall wrestling fan base. And yeah, they're going to be losing money, but when you got as much money as the Khans do, I mean, they can afford to take the losses. Here's an interesting one from Stephen, I think it's Stephen, says, what is your Mount Rushmore of wrestling matches? Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Mount Rushmore of wrestling matches, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin is always going to be at my top. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. And I feel like I have to include the Hell in a Cell too. So there's 3 right there. And then 4th, I might go Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels, the first ladder match. I'm sticking to mostly 90s just because like those were my all-time favorites as a kid growing up. And to me, those matches really made a big impact on the industry. Like Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, that match, that created the whole ladder match concept as a thing in wrestling. I mean, there was the Bret Hart Shawn Michaels one from 2 years earlier, but it was that WrestleMania match that put the ladder match on the map. The first Hell in a Cell match put that match on the map, and Kane's debut. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels ushered in the Attitude Era, and Stone Cold reaching his peak as the biggest draw in WWE history. And of course, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker from 25, always one of my favorite matches. Just an all-time classic, in my opinion. And I always say, if you're going to break into wrestling, study that match. do what they do. Learn from that match. That would be the one. And of course, Randy Savage, Ricky Steamboat would be honorable mention. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart would be honorable mention. There's a lot of them. Not Bret. Well, a lot of Bret. But I was going to say CM Punk versus John Cena from Money in the Bank was great. Yeah, there's a lot of them that I can think of. Got this question via email from Calvin Bowman. Says, what is your favorite classic King of the Ring and why? And his favorite was the 98 King of the Ring. Well, Calvin, I would go 93, the original King of the Ring. I love the one-night tournament, and I'm bummed that we never got it back after around 96. I think they did it for like the first 3 years, and the third one, the year where Mabel won was definitely no good. 94 was okay, 0-1, which was cool, but wasn't my favorite. 93, definitely my favorite King of the Ring pay-per-view and just the overall tournament. Can't go wrong with 93 and Bret Hart winning it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho, as always. Will Brock Lesnar ever come back to WWE? If I had to put money on it, if somebody put a gun to my head, I'd say yes. I can't imagine him never coming back to WWE in any capacity. You can do the match with Gunther. You can do a match with Braun Breaker. And maybe a few other guys will be built up over the next year or two that can potentially go against Brock Lesnar. I definitely think there's one more run in him. And it's just a matter of the legal issues. Once that's cleared up with Brock, and hopefully it will be cleared up, I'd like to see him come back and have one more run. The fact that his name was mentioned leads me to believe that he will be back at some point. They haven't totally erased him from history. They're just trying to downplay him now as this Vince McMahon legal case plays out. Now, of course, the Vince case is on delay, so that could complicate things with Brock coming back. But, yeah, I still think there's stuff left for him to do before he hangs it up for good. And I do think we'll see him back eventually. So thank you for that, Psycho. And Jeremiah Dorset sent in this email question. Says, hey, Aaron, what would have the WWE product looked like if Triple H had gotten full control of the company from Vince 10 years ago? Maybe CM Punk didn't walk out. Maybe Rollins doesn't turn heel. Bryan doesn't win the WWE title at WrestleMania 30, and Undertaker's undefeated streak remained intact. Your thoughts? I think if Triple H had taken over in 2014, you would have seen a lot of the same, because I think that NXT would have obviously been very similar. Would Triple H have been running both, or would have Shawn Michaels, would somebody else have taken over? But I definitely think you would have seen all the guys we saw come to the main roster, the Sami Zayns, the Kevin Owens, like all those guys were brought in. Triple H's influence was already being felt. But yeah, as far as some of the booking decisions, I don't know if Roman Reigns would have been shoved down everybody's throats like he was. That might be the biggest change. I don't know how Roman Reigns' career would have gone if Triple H was fully in charge in 2014. That, to me, is the question mark. Like, would Roman Reigns have even been a thing if Triple H was in charge? He might have, but it's really hard to say. Would Roman Reigns have turned heel sooner? Like they turned a babyface and then it fell flat. Maybe they would have turned him heel. Maybe we would have gotten the Tribal Chief sooner. Maybe we would have gotten The Rock versus Roman Reigns in 2015 or 2016. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, is Braun Breaker being pushed at the right pace? Yes. I mean, he was in NXT for like 3 years, almost 3 years. And I think he was ready like after the first year. You want to get that fresh blood in there. He is a fresh face, and he's hot right now. So, yeah, when he's hot, you got to capitalize on it. Don't put the brake on the guy. You have a chance to make a new superstar, and Braun Breaker is quickly becoming that guy. So I think it's absolutely the right pace and the right time, and they just got to keep doing what they're doing. And, yeah, I think he's a great candidate to take that IC title off of Sami Zayn. Got this question here from Ian via email. Says, if both the U.S. title and the WWE Undisputed titles are on the line, do you see a possible DQ finish to protect both? Oh, this is an old question. Wow, I'm in my backlog now, and I went to an old question. So scratch everything I just said. Okay, this one comes from Calvin Bowman via email. Says, what do you think of Ethan Page being part of NXT? I think it was a good move by him. He was just stuck in AEW. Now, unfortunately, the match that he had with Trick Williams did not light the world on fire. I don't think it was at the level of previous NXT main events. But I think NXT is his best shot, and he's got his opportunity now. And, yeah, I would have done the same thing if I was him. If I had the opportunity to go to NXT, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. And best of luck to him. He's a good promo, good talent, and maybe he'll find his calling. Maybe he'll find the right gimmick, and he'll be a big star in WWE. I think the jury's still out on it, though. I feel like he's got to evolve a little bit. Like, he just can't be the indie gimmick, the all ego that he's been doing in Impact and AEW. I feel like he's got to find a new layer to his persona. And if he can do that, I think that he's got some real potential to be a major star in WWE. All right, so this is an interesting question via email from Jeremiah Dorset. Says, do you think Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk needs a special stipulation for their match? It depends. If they're doing multiple matches, then I don't think the first one necessarily needs to be a stipulation, just because it's the novelty of being their first match. You don't really need it. And I would say after all this, they should have more than one match. I think it would be asked backwards to do a stipulation and then do a regular match. So, yeah, I think I would start off with a regular match, even though that this is very personal with these guys. I think I would do a regular match first, and then if they run it back, then you could do Hell in a Cell or Falls Count Anywhere or some kind of intense, hardcore match to settle their grudge. So thank you for that. I appreciate that super chat. Now, TJS had sent in this question. TJS says, what are your thoughts on WWE's speed? He says it would have been cool to have bigger guys on there and do squash matches and mix that with the high-flying matches. I haven't seen WWE Speed. I haven't watched it, but I'm aware of some of the results. They're 3-minute matches, and I think Ciampa lost a match in 3 minutes, which I don't know if that necessarily does anybody any favors. I get what they're doing. They're trying to appeal to the Twitter audience, the short attention spans. Somebody who's not a wrestling fan might see it on their feed, and they're like, oh, it's a 3-minute video. Okay, I'll check it out. So I get what they're trying to do with it, but it's not for me. I don't really think it benefits anybody to be losing in 2-minute matches. So I personally don't have any interest in watching them. Apparently, the title matches are 5 minutes, but still. There's already too much WWE programming. For me, I think I'm just going to pass on it. And I got one more here from TJS, so I'll get to this one. He says, where does Triple H's 2002 return at MSG rank in your top wrestling returns of all time? And he thinks 2002 Triple H was the perfect wrestler. I would say 2000 Triple H was the perfect wrestler. By 2002, Triple H was a little bit past his peak physically. You know, he had that surgery. He was out for 8 months. He slowed down a bit. I don't think he was quite at the level he was in 2000. But that return was pretty epic. Him coming out there and getting that pop at Madison Square Garden, definitely one of the all-time biggest return moments. And TJS threw in one more email question. He said, any opinion on Sting's 2010 heel turn? Him, Hogan, and Flair all wrestling that year is crazy because they were all old then. Was not a fan of it. I mean, Sting was part of the Main Event Mafia. Sting being a heel, like, I get it. They were trying to add layers to him. Sting as a heel never worked. Never worked in WCW, never worked in TNA. I will say this, though. I found the Joker Sting to be underrated. I wasn't the biggest fan at the time. I just thought it was very cheesy, but I actually think it aged well, and I think it was a good idea. Unfortunately, TNA was heading downhill at that point, but Joker Sting was very entertaining, and I don't think it gets enough credit for being fun and outside the box. And Sting did a great job with it. I thought he was really entertaining with the gimmick, and I would have liked to have seen it on a bigger stage. Like, we did kind of see it with Seth Rollins, that segment with the statue. He was acting a little Joker Sting-ish, and then he did a little bit in AEW, but I would have liked to have seen more of it. Anyways, guys, on that note, I will go ahead and wrap this up. We're close to the 1 hour point here. So thank you all so much for tuning in to NoDQ&A video. Got a lot of questions answered here. And if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, give this video a thumbs up on YouTube, and please spread the word. Share a link to this video on social media. We got one more question here via Super Chat from Psycho Jet Black. He says, would Triple H ever shove anyone down our throats? I could only see that if he really has a strong gut instinct on something. And I think, you know, his opinion is going to weigh more than everybody else's because of his experience. If he thinks something is going to work and the fans just have to get used to it, I could see him going with it. But at the same time, he's going to listen. You really have to balance it out. Like, you don't want to cave into every opinion. If one show gets negative feedback, you don't want to just abandon ship on your plan. But at the same time, if you do multiple shows and it's clear something's not working, then maybe you have to consider changing things up a little bit. Anyways, guys, thank you again for everything. I appreciate it. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest news and rumors. And Calvin Bowman threw me another email. Why did Sid leave WWE in 1997? Well, the rumor, the popular rumor was that whenever it was softball season, Sid had to take his hiatus from wrestling. And, you know, there were a number of opinions on Sid that maybe he didn't want to do a job at a certain period of time. He got injured. He wanted to play softball. There were all these different things going on with Sid. So it wasn't just like one thing. Let's see here. Ian had sent in this email. So we got one more here. Who do I see winning Money in the Bank right now for the men and women, and what's the best option? Depending on who's in it, I mean, Chad Gable would be a great choice. Jey Uso would be a great choice. We had a heel win in Damian Priest, and typically it's better for a heel to have it, but I wouldn't mind seeing Jey Uso with Money in the Bank. I mean, they could. Here's the thing, to quote Jeff Meacham. Think about the briefcase, Yeet in the Bank briefcases. Like, from a marketing standpoint, WWE could make a killing with that. And sometimes that's how they operate. Like, how can we make the most money? Yeet in the Bank physical briefcases they can sell. So I feel for that reason alone, he's an odds-on favorite. Women's Money in the Bank, Tiffany Stratton. If they're still planning to push her, I think she would be the best choice to win. We'll see what happens. Anyways, guys, have a great night. Thank you again for tuning in, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com. Buy a shirt, NoDQ.com/merch. Say yes to NoDQ, and I will see you all next time.